the audience, sorry. Marijuana, pot, hemp, reefer, weed, these are all terms that are commonly used to describe the plant, which is scientifically known as cannabis sativa. Now, I'm sure most of you know what this plant is commonly used for in the United States, but what you may not know is that there are over 25,000 different uses for this amazing plant, both industrial and medical. However, over the last 70 years, the government and the media have been creating myths and exaggerations to keep the American public ignorant as to all the uses for this plant, because they have their own agenda. Now, before you think this is just some stoner's conspiracy theory, I want to tell you some words that were recorded by Ed Rosenthal and Steve Cubby in the book Why Marijuana Should Be Legal. These words come from Dr. Todd McAraya, who is the former director of marijuana research for the entire federal government. He's quoted to say, "I was hired by the government to provide scientific evidence that marijuana was harmful. As I studied the subject, I began to realize that marijuana was once widely used as a safe and effective medicine, but the government had a different agenda, and I had to resign." Now, I'm sure everybody knows somebody, or has known somebody, who is suffering from chronic illness or chronic pain. And this was the case with me. This is how I became interested in the subject matter. My grandmother was dying from cancer, and the chemotherapy had made her so sick that she couldn't eat anymore. And I had a friend who suggested that she smoke marijuana so that she could ease the nausea and have her appetite increase. I knew my grandmother would never go for the idea, but it challenged my own beliefs. And so I decided to start doing some research, and I've actually been researching this for over a decade now in my free time. So what I'm going to tell you is why the laws surrounding marijuana are a problem, what can be done to change these laws, and the effects that this will have on our society. The main problem is not that there are laws. There should be laws, as there are with all drugs. But marijuana is classified as a Schedule I drug, which means that it's harmful and dangerous and has no accepted medical use. Now, this is a harsher classification that's given to cocaine or heroin, two drugs that can kill you by overdose, which marijuana can't do. And the idea that marijuana is harmful and dangerous, that it causes violent behavior, is actually ridiculous. In fact, if you scan the government's website, whitehouse-drugpolicy.gov, and look at the 10 myths surrounding marijuana, you'll see that 70% of the violence that they attribute to marijuana is actually caused by marijuana's legal status and not by the drug itself. And I also found a quote from Jeffrey A. Roth, the former director of the National Academy of Sciences, and this is a report to the U.S. Department of Justice, and he actually says that marijuana temporarily inhibits violent behavior in the user. So that's one myth that is totally unfounded. Next, I'm going to tell you about the benefits that this drug can, or this plant, not the drug, but the plant can have for our economy, industrial-wise. If you go to NORML's website, NORML stands for the National Organization for Reformation of Marijuana Laws, you can find that there are various parts of the plant that can be utilized in the making of textiles, papers, paints, clothing, plastics, cosmetics, foodstuffs, insulation, animal feed, and other products. The paper that's made from marijuana is more durable, more dependable, and lasts much longer. It doesn't yellow like the wood pulp paper does. Not to mention, it takes 20 years to grow the trees from which wood pulp paper is made, whereas a good crop of hemp can produce as much paper and then be replanted the next year. Also, it keeps the soil free from weeds. Another thing to note is that the oil that is made from the hemp plant is one of the most efficient and clean-burning oils in the world. And with the energy crisis on everybody's mind today, it's worth considering that we could be using hemp oil to operate our machinery and our cars, and it would make America energy independent. And the last thing about the industry of hemp is that all the products made from hemp are biodegradable. So the more we use this plant to create our products, the less pollution we be putting into the earth. Having told you about the economic uses and the environmental benefits, I now want to move on to the medical uses again. I found another quote from Dr. Todd Nicaraya. This one was on the Online Library of Drug Policy. He says that, of course, imprudently used cannabis can be harmful, but when ingested safely, it is one of the most useful of medicines for a variety of conditions. Now, this is the basis upon which states like California have passed their medical marijuana laws. Sadly, though, these laws are being ignored and overridden by the federal law. Steve Covey, the director of the American Medical Marijuana Association, is quoted on his website. It's actually in a letter to the police detective of one of their local police departments. And the detective had released a report about the dangers and harms of marijuana and about people abusing this law. And so this was his response to that. He says, sick, disabled, and dying patients throughout California are still being raided by SWAT teams, arrested, jailed, humiliated, treated like criminals, bankrupted, having their children abducted by CPS, and made even sicker because of those who are still deliberately opposing this law, 11 years after the people of California voted to exempt patients and caregivers from criminal penalties and sanctions. Now, in my opinion, that's unacceptable. These people are law-abiding, sick people, but they're still being harassed by the government and thrown in jail for just trying to make themselves feel better and live a normal life. So this brings us to what we can do to help and how we can stop this from happening. The first part lies with education. You have to educate yourselves. Don't take my word for it. Go on the internet, go to the library, look in books. You can double check my facts, and along the way you're going to find a lot more than what I can tell you in an 8-minute speech. And then second, you're going to have to educate others, as I'm doing right now, which is going to take patience and vigilance and bravery, because as soon as you start to talk openly about this subject, people are automatically going to peg you as a pothead or a drug addict. But the benefits of trying to educate people, in my opinion, far outweigh what other people might be thinking about me and how that affects me. I can be proud knowing that I'm doing a just cause and fighting for what's right. The next thing you can do is write to your local, state, and government representatives. Tell them that you know the truth and remind them of the benefits of this plant. I'm sure they already know it, but until their constituents start writing to them in great numbers and demanding that something change, they're not going to stir the controversial pot, pardon the pun. Next, you can get involved with NORML. There's a local chapter of NORML at UCF. You can go to their functions, attend their meetings, and they can keep you informed on the current events, what's going on in today's society. And the last thing and the most important thing is to go to the polls and vote when and if this issue makes it onto the ballot. In closing, I just want to remind you what you'll be voting for. You'll be voting for our environment, our economy, and most importantly, you'll be voting to end the needless suffering of sick people. You'll be helping to change the world for the better. One person can't do this on their own, but together we can make a difference. Thank you.